Well, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where we share business ideas, practices, and strategies. I'm Chad Lingefeld with Loc-Doc Security. Today, our guest is a Scrum Master, an Agile coach. And if you don't know what either of those things are, that is the number one reason why you want to stick around, because this is going to be a very informative conversation coming up right after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
All right, welcome back. Thank you, Nick, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We've been trying to coordinate our schedules for a while, and I'm really glad to have you here because I think we've had a lot of really interesting side conversations leading up to this. I think it's going to be very informative for all of our audience when it comes to finding ways to get people on the same page to make progress within an organization. So I'm really excited about it.
Definitely, I am too.
Before we do that, though, there's a segment called Rapid Fire, 5 randomly selected questions, and I know you like off the cuff stuff.
Oh, I love it.
So we're going to throw 5 random questions at you, and just to kind of get to know you a little better.
All right.
What was your first concert that you ever went to?
Oh, Fred Hammond.
Yeah.
Fred Hammond concert.
Where?
Tallahassee, Florida.
Tallahassee, Florida. What was a big memory from it?
Oh man, Fred Hammond was there. There was a lot of other gospel artists, but just the big memory was just how crystal clear the sound was in the auditorium, and just I don't know, it's just very impactful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, what is a jingle that gets stuck in your head all the time?
Probably Jingle Bells, because my daughter sings that constantly.
Jingle bells.
Jingle Bells. She sings it constantly. It's like it's not even close to Christmas, but she's still singing Jingle Bells.
Oh, that's funny. All right, if you wrote a book, what would it be called?
It would be called Nick Jordan.
The story of Nick Jordan.
Story of Nick Jordan.
Another one of the questions I was going to ask you was, if you had a country, what would you call it? But that's not going to count towards this. But you can answer it as a bonus question.
We'll call it Agility.
Oh, that's great. All right, if you could eliminate one food forever, never have to touch it again, what would it be?
Brussels sprouts.
Really?
Yep.
Why?
I guess that's more so like a childhood thing.
Yeah.
I didn't like them growing up. I've had them. They're pretty good recently. Had some bacon wrapped around them, so bacon makes everything better.
Brussels sprouts is making a comeback. It used to be like the bane of everybody's existence, but it's making a comeback.
Yeah.
All right, who is your celebrity lookalike?
Oh man, celebrity lookalike. Oh, fell in this one. Oh man. I don't think I have one.
You don't have one?
Yeah.
I can't think of one either. All right. And then the last one. What was your first job?
Walmart.
Walmart.
I was
What'd
a
you do?
cashier.
Cashier at Walmart.
Yeah.
Really? And that was down where? In Florida?
Monroe. Yep. Monroe, North Carolina.
Oh, Monroe, North Carolina. Uh-oh. Do you know Zach Pfeiffer?
No, I don't. I don't know.
Everybody knows Zach Pfeiffer in Monroe. All right, Nick, we're going to get into the conversation. By the way, you passed score 934.
Oh, okay.
So congratulations. What? We have it's a very refined scoring system for the rapid fire questions. All right, let's get into the conversation today. We've got a lot of questions to chat or to ask and to chat about, but I really want to, I guess, before we get too far into the conversation, really set a definition and a parameter around what does Scrum mean, because if there's anybody else that's watching or listening that is anything like me, I was telling you this story earlier. Several months ago, there was 2 of our team members, Lucas and Levi, and I walked in and they were standing around drinking coffee and writing things on a whiteboard. And I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "We're having a Scrum session." It's like, 1, you just made that word up. That's not even a thing. And 2, this is just an excuse to hang out and drink coffee. And then a few months later, I met you, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" You're like, "I'm a Scrum Master." I was like, am I being punked? What is going on here? Fast forward a few more months, I was talking to one of my buddies from a large corporation, and he said, "Hey, I've been reading about the Agile method and it's Scrum. It's really big in the development world. I was like, this is a thing like this. So when I learned about more of it, and as we were having these conversations, I said this has got to be a relevant topic for our audience as well, because it's not new, but it's starting to get a little bit more, I guess, recognition outside of the small pocket of people that have been using it. So with all that said, set us up. What is Scrum? What does it mean for the people that have never heard about it before?
Yeah, sure. So first, talk about Scrum. We're going to talk about Agile, which is basically Agile is a methodology that allows for quick iteration. Really, that's the focus of a quick iteration, because you want to deliver value to your customer very quickly. You want to be able to adapt to changes within the business. Scrum is a lightweight framework that supports Agile methods. So within Scrum, it's basically you organizing the development team, or it could be another type of function or team, but you're organizing them to be able to deliver in a quick fashion. So typically you have a sprint cycle, which could be 2 weeks, is the general terms of sprint cycles. Some lengths can be shorter or longer, but usually within those 2 weeks, the team is going to meet. You're going to have a daily Scrum, which your coworkers are doing. Daily Scrum, which basically gives a touch point where they talk about what they've done the previous day, what they're going to plan to do that next day, and any issues that they're having that they can all challenge or attack as a team. And then you also have a planning session, which is in the beginning before you start those 2 weeks. You're going to have a planning session. You have a retrospective, which basically you are looking back. How did we deliver that last 2 weeks, and how can we improve moving forward? So the key is having quick iterations, because you're delivering value to your business or to your customers every 2 weeks or every whatever the length of the sprint is, and then you're getting feedback and you're making changes and modifying your plans based on the feedback that you receive.
So a Scrum session, in essence, is the kind of a structure of a meeting. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, it's more so the framework for development.
Okay.
And then within that, and this is a lightweight framework, so within that there are other frameworks that can be added to it, such as a Kanban board, which is basically about visualizing the work. So you want to be able to see all of the work that the team is doing, so you can see where the progress is, you can see where help is needed, you can see are we going to meet the goals of that sprint based on the progress of the team. And so there are other things that you can add to that Scrum framework that adds value and makes it a little bit more robust, but it is a lightweight framework that allows teams to be able to quickly deliver value.
I want to come back to some of the, I guess, modules or the break-offs of that, because I think that from what I understand of it and the conversations that we've had and some of the things that we have tried around here have been a very value-add benefit for us to just kind of understand what needs to be processed. So I want to dive into that a little more. So with that, and we had an episode, I don't remember how many episodes ago it was, but with Lucas Ward on our team, and he was kind of describing the difference between Agile and Waterfall. So if you want more information on that, you can go back and check out that episode as well, and talks about the Agile Manifesto, which is the kind of the driver behind a lot of this.
Correct.
And as you mentioned earlier, that was not something that they had. The Agile Manifesto, describe what you were talking about earlier. The Agile Manifesto was not what they were hoping to accomplish. It's what they had already had seen.
Yeah, so it was the 12 developers who came together and created Agile Manifesto. They met several times before, but it was 2001, and it wasn't an aspirational document that they were trying to create. It was more so a standard of best practices that they had experimented with and explored and saw how to best achieve results within a development team. And so it was more so just them documenting, this is what we found success in, and this is where we hope the industry moves forward toward, instead of, we think this might work. They experienced it, those principles and those practices, and we're kind of more so putting together like a best practice for the industry.
So with all that, so your title is a Scrum Master / Agile Coach.
Correct.
So we've kind of given a description as what a Scrum session would be and how it applies into an Agile format or Agile development, where we're constantly reiterating. It's the always improving. Does this work? Yes. If no, why? What do we do to fix it? And reassess real quick. What is the role of the Scrum Master / Agile Coach in that operation? What is it that you bring to the table?
Yeah, so a Scrum Master is working with the development team, and they're helping to coach the development team and ensure that they're developing and they're meeting their goals, they're bringing value, they're working together. So a big aspect of being a Scrum Master is servant leadership. So you want to be able to serve the team, help them to be efficient, help them to work together as a team. Part of what the development team is doing is self-organization.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about kind of the differences between a Scrum Master. You and I have had conversations about differences between a Scrum Master and a project manager, but it's more so you're helping the team to best do their work and find ways to best do their work together. And so as a Scrum Master, you're coaching the team. You're also coaching a role that's called the product owner.
Yep.
And the product owner, they basically own the requirements for the software that you're delivering or the value that you're trying to bring to the customer. They own the relationship of having a relationship with the customer, understanding their needs, understanding what's going to benefit the customer, and they bring that heartbeat of the customer to the team and share with the team. This is what we should be looking toward and going after, and the team is going to help bridge the gap by saying, well, technology, we can provide the technology to meet that goal. So as a Scrum Master, you're kind of helping facilitate those relationships and helping to make sure that it's an efficient process, and then also making sure that you're helping to drive continuous improvement within that team.
So one of the things that I wanted to, and I feel like we talked about this some in the episode where we kind of deciphered out the difference between Agile and Waterfall. It doesn't necessarily have to live within technology development.
Right,
It can
correct.
be, and that's kind of what we had been discussing, it can live in any type of operation in your business. It does not have to be technology driven.
Right.
How are you seeing that come to light? Because that's where it all originated from, but other companies, other departments are starting to adapt that philosophy as well.
Right, yeah. So I'll give you an example. Executive within organization I worked in before,
Yep.
they lay out a retrospective of their own organization.
Okay.
And part of what they do is when they're rolling out changes, they do it in a matter of experimentation. And so they'll roll out the change, they'll experiment, they'll see how the change is taking place, what's happening, how effective is that change. They'll go back, they'll do a retrospective on the change and determine what adjustments need to be made, and then they'll make adjustments as needed. And so when you look at it, even within someone who's over technology within an organization, if they can do that, they're pulling out those Scrum principles, and it's not like they're having a daily Scrum, particularly
Sure.
in that instance, but they're looking and saying, part of it is how can we continuously improve? And part of continuous improvement is realizing that you might not get it right the first time. So within the 2-week sprint, we might not deliver the exact thing that the customer needs, but we've invested 2 weeks instead of 2 years. And so we can be able to ask the customer, hey, is this right? How can we change it? How can we improve it? How can we make it better? And so that executive, they're rolling out a change, but then they're also checking in and seeing, was this change effective? Did it achieve the desired results? And if not, how can I improve it? How can I make it more effective?
In all of that thought process, it requires a way of thinking.
Right.
The ability to say it's okay if we mess up.
Right,
It's okay to fail because we're going to reiterate and we're going to fix. The conversations that you have with people that maybe don't see that or don't think that way, how are you best, I guess, trying to convince them or communicate why this works and how this works?
Yeah. So what you're talking about, or what the principle that we talk about within Agile is failing fast. And so what you want to do is if you want to fail fast, because you're not going to get it right. It's not going to be perfect all the time. And so if you're able to fail and see how you failed, how you haven't succeeded, you're able to quickly then get to the right solution. And sometimes it's better to start something and understand how it didn't work versus charting a course going for a long distance on a path that's wrong. So with folks that are having challenges seeing that, it's just explaining to them the difference of, usually if you talk about just the investment of time, and there have been, for industry that I've worked in within software development and within technology, there are several projects that can span the course of months to years and then don't achieve the desired result. So helping them to understand, well, yeah, that didn't achieve the desired result because there was no feedback along the way. And just that within the Agile approach, you're able to get feedback quickly. And so you're able to quickly get to the right approach.
So you're taking it. the process has intentional course correction built in. So,
right.
Hey, we know this is probably going to fail because we're still testing the waters. When it does fail, it's more important why it failed, less that it failed.
Right.
So that you know what to fix and correct. Some of the activities associated with this thought process with Agile to help kind of understand, because one of the things that we were kind of outlining earlier, and I don't want to go too far off on this rabbit trail, but project management versus Agile coach and Scrum Master is as you were kind of describing it. A project manager is managing a scope that is known. Agile and Scrum Master is more so helping to understand a direction and keep people in a direction and constantly adjusting versus understanding a known scope. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. If you look at a project manager, they're managing a project which has a defined start, defined or desired end date. So they're managing the time, the resources, the cost of that project. And they're making and keeping track of those things. Within an Agile approach or a Scrum Master, it's a different takes a different skill set. Typically, a project manager is going to be more so about command and control, which is because they have a lot that they're required to manage, and they have the course correct along the way and so forth. And so within Agile approach is more about servant leadership. So you're more so working with that team. And there are some elements where you have releases and you have time frames and so forth that you can work within as well. So there's an aspect of that you have to mend, but it's more about making sure that the team is effective along the way, and then you're course correcting, because within a project you're getting a lot of requirements all up front. Mm-hmm. You're defining what that project is. Typically there are contracts in place that say you have to deliver A, B, and C exactly as you articulated it. Within Agile, you understand that there are going to be changing requirements. You're welcoming those changes because you want the end goal, you want the customer to be satisfied, and that might not have been achieved if you just stuck to the exact terms of a contract. So it's more about making sure that the customer has what they need and that they're satisfied with the experience that you've delivered.
So the way I try to process a lot of this information is because I know a lot of this comes from the development world. Some of it comes from large corporations, large corporate America. And in a small business atmosphere where you may not necessarily have a dedicated Scrum Master or Agile coach all the time as a dedicated role, what are some of the activities that you could apply in small business that you could say, hey, thinking this way, hey, I'm a small business owner or leader, and this really hits home with me. I think this is something that we can adapt into our organization. What are some things that can be done, some exercises that can be done to kind of help the team get on the same page and to start thinking this way?
Yeah, so one, I would say retrospective is I think is a very pertinent exercise that can be done in any size organization. And what that does is basically, as we talked about kind of within the Scrum framework, we're doing it at every 2 weeks, but with any organization, you can set defined points in time of where you're checking in with your employees to see, what their experience of the company is, how they see the company can grow and produce or change or modify to be able to continue to add value. You're also checking in and understanding and having touch points with your customer base to be able to see what it is that they need and what their goals are. Are you still meeting their goals? Are you still meeting their needs? Is there something that's out there in the marketplace that you can go and be able to evolve your business to be able to further meet their needs? And so being able to have those touch points, I think, is very key. And that's a part of the continuous improvement, because if you have the touch point, you get the feedback, then you're able to modify your approach and improve from that feedback that you've received.
So as you're going through this process, you've mentioned sprint multiple times. Rough definition of that, and for if we wanted to try to apply that into a small business atmosphere, what is a sprint?
Yeah, so a sprint is just a time box. It's typically within Agile, it's a 2-week time frame. It could be shorter, could be longer, but it's a time box that you are able to produce certain activities. At the end of that time box, within a software development Agile approach, you're wanting to particularly produce shippable software. So you want to produce something that the customer can use and give you feedback on. So it's just a time box of activities that you're going to have an end result to meet a goal. And that goal, we call it a sprint goal, but it's a goal that you want to deliver that value to the customer. It could be a new feature. It could be just whatever the case may be. But it's some value that you're delivering to the customer that you want to get their feedback on.
So in any atmosphere, product development or not, but you're just saying, hey, this is our action items.
Right.
We've got 2 weeks. We'll meet back in go ahead and put it on the calendar. In 2 weeks, we'll come back with whatever producible material, content, whatever that we have, and see where we are. And the goal is to have something that is usable, even if it's not perfect.
Right.
So
yeah, and then with that, you have daily checkpoints. That's what we talk about, the daily Scrum. So it's not just 2 weeks and go and be to yourself, and we'll get back to you later. But it's a daily checkpoint where you're able to say,
are we on track?
Yeah, are we on track? And it's more so about an update of what you've done, and it's more so about what you've done and what you're doing the next day, and so that gives awareness to everyone.
Yep.
And it also, you give a touch point if you have an issue. You're informing the team so that everyone is able to help you resolve that, or someone is able to help you to resolve that, versus sitting with the issue and then at the end of the 2 week period or the sprint or what have you, you haven't achieved something because you were stuck.
So I want to kind of address this conversation in two ways, because before we go on to some other stuff, one, creating priorities and trying to understand that, and then two, having the ability to take some of these concepts and improve workflow. Okay,
right.
So these are two totally different conversations, I think, because I get an opportunity to talk to a lot of business owners, and the biggest thing they have is we're overwhelmed with 1,000 things that we want to work on.
Right.
So understanding how to create priorities. Before we get to that conversation, I want to talk about understanding and improving workflow. So part of this process that you're describing can help improve workflow for really any position in your organization by doing that from an outsider's perspective. And that's been a constant theme on a lot of our podcasts and a lot of our conversations around here. So talk through that, how a kind of a discovery process happens through this methodology.
Yeah, certainly. So there is a concept called design thinking. And basically that concept, you are working with the end user, people that you want to impact, that you want to be able to deliver something that's valuable to them. You're working directly with them to be able to see what it is that they're currently doing, what's their current experience, what's their current flow, how are they getting their work done. And you're looking for opportunities to be able to innovate within that flow, and you're having them to articulate. You're actually seeing them work through it, and then you're working with them to envision new ways of working, and you're helping them to think outside of the box, outside of what they've been doing for the last however many years. And then once you get to that place and you see something that could be an opportunity area, you can measure those, and you can measure and see, well, if we make this change, the actual development team, this is the cost. This is the anticipated gain that we'll have from this change. You're able to put metrics around it, and see what are the best wins, what are the best to go after and pursue to be able to deliver something that's going to be valuable to the customer.
Number one question that I would think would come back is you bring somebody in and say, hey, we want to help you try to improve your workflow, and you get pushback. I don't need you to help me improve my workflow. I'm good.
Yeah.
How do you kind of set that conversation up to explain that you're trying to help them grow that area, that department or whatever, or make that position better? What does that conversation typically look like?
Yes, I mean, you ask them, if you had an extra 2 hours out of the week, would that help you? And they probably will say yes, or you ask them.
That's a hard one to say no about.
Yeah, that's a hard one to say no, I don't need the extra 2 hours, or and so basically, if you didn't have to work overtime, would that help you? If you didn't have to work overtime, so you find some way to attribute the value to something that's going to be beneficial to them.
Okay.
Versus versus just purely what's going to be beneficial to the company.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just here to disrupt your workflow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So finding ways to add the value.
Yeah. And I think another part of it is I've seen organizations that help employees understand that change is a part of the organization, continuously iterating, continuously improving. I've heard some of the podcasts. I heard, one of the ones that you did with Lucas, where you guys were talking about the organization and just how you look for ways to improve, you look for ways to change. So having that type of culture helps to prevent, those that get stuck in their ways. It's natural. People, change is hard, change is difficult. But if you know that that's a part of the organization, that we value being able to iterate, we value being able to improve, we value, not staying the same because we want to get better. When you value that as an organization, then typically, although it can be painful, usually the employees will want to seek that out.
You may have addressed this at the beginning of the conversation, but just for clarification, what's the benefit of Scrum over some traditional methodologies of process improvement?
Yeah, so the biggest benefit is time to market. You want to be able to deliver the value that your customers need at the time they need it versus waiting and delivering it off of a 6-month, year program or project where by the time you get to market, it's not exactly what the customer needed. And I'll give you an example. So I worked at Microsoft. We use Office. We deliver Office software, typically the box software, and they still deliver it as a box. But it's like every 3 years they would deliver a box of the new Office software. And what they realized is that it didn't give them a chance to iterate and to improve along the way where customers are getting value. They have to wait every 3 years before they get something that was new or that was beneficial. And you have new products like, Google Docs that's coming along where they're online based, so they're able to quickly iterate. They want to compete with that. And so they then had Office 365 where they're able to push software and then provide it to customers in a much more quick fashion, a much more iterative fashion. They hear about an issue, they're able to make an update and push it, and the customer gets it in a lot quicker manner. So that's kind of the idea of the benefit of an agile approach versus a waterfall approach is that you are able to deliver value to your customers quicker. You're able to get their feedback. You're able to iterate, improve, make improvements, give them more value, and so and it allows you to have a better relationship with the customer because it's a more substantiated relationship.
Well, and I guess it also gives you the ability to have more relevancy because if you are working on a long-term strategy and what you had decided was prioritization, then by the time you release it 2-3 years later or you implement it 2 or 3 years later, those same priorities may not be applicable.
Exactly.
And you have so defined that scope that you've not been able to adapt to that. Through the Scrum sessions and processing that, how do you avoid micromanagement when you're doing sprint planning, when you're doing these processes? Because you mentioned project management and how it has some of those capacities because that's kind of how it's designed.
Right.
How does this avoid that?
Yeah, so I think within Scrum and just avoiding micromanagement is that really the key is self-organization within the team. So you're empowering the team to know that they have a voice. You're telling them this is what we need to develop as far as what's going to be the value. That's really the product owner is going to bring that what to the team. Yeah. But the team is going to figure out the how. They're going to figure out how best can they deliver the value that's being asked, of them. And so with that, they feel empowered to make decisions. They feel empowered to implement best practices that they feel are going to be beneficial. They feel empowered to look for opportunities to bring efficiency to something or to a process that the customer is dealing with. And so when the team feels empowered, they feel like they have a voice. They feel like they have the capabilities to be able to express and solve creatively challenging problems. Sure. Then they feel bought in, and that's really the key is that the team feels bought in and delivers their best work.
So if you have essentially breaking that out is if you have a team that's bought into the process or bought into the vision, micromanagement kind of falls by the wayside anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and then also another difference is within from traditional software development is really the team is incentivized to deliver together versus traditional software development could be individualized. It's like I did my lines of code, I'm good. More so within the agile approach, the whole team, we want to get together and meet our whole sprint goal. So I could have done my work, but if we fail our sprint goal, then we haven't been successful as a team, and the team takes that ownership on.
That's very interesting. Just to kind of go way off base with that, one of the things in our organization we've been doing for several years is team goals. We have monthly team goals, and we either all win as a team or we all fail as a team. Yeah. Now there's individual contributions that will help towards that, but it's a win or fail based off of the entire team, and it does create, I think, motion in the same direction. Right. And what you just described just made me that it just kind of clicked with me is that's where some of that success has been because it requires everybody to be bought into that, not just one person that says, I don't care what you guys do. It's all about me.
Yeah. I love it. I love team goals. And I think that, like you said, that allows folks to be bought in as far as what everyone else is doing. So it's not just about what I'm doing, but how can I help the other team member be successful so that we can meet our goal together. because we all have to get across the finish line for us to, it's a relay. We all got to get across the finish line. We all have to play our part.
When you're working on projects, when you're managing these teams, or not necessarily managing teams, because that's one of the points that you brought up earlier, is you don't really have direct management of this. It's a working with, right?
Right.
What kind of tools are you guys using to stay connected, to stay on the same page? Is there a piece of software that you're using? Is it just a certain type of communication? What does that look like that you've seen? Maybe some good examples that have worked well and some that have not worked so well.
Yeah. So within teams, a lot of teams use, as far as within enterprise software development, a lot of teams are using something like Jira, or there's a Rally, and there are other project management, or not really, agile management tools.
Sure.
But even as far as just your everyday, I use something like a Trello board to be able to track different things that I'm working on, and I really look at just kind of relating agile and just in the process to everyday life. Like for me, for instance, I'll use a Trello board, and I will have things that my wife may want done around the house. I treat her as
put that on the back burner.
But I'll treat her as my product owner at times, and I'll say, okay,
Gotcha.
These are the things that you want. Help me prioritize what's most important. Okay, I understand what the priorities are. This is what I can get done. Can't get this done because it's going to take all weekend. And
I'm just imagining this conversation right now. It's
but I'm just saying, but that's a really real life example of how even just at the simplest level of a relationship with two parties, you can be able to think in an agile manner and be able to manage those things in a way that allows me to create a freedom, because I can be able to do what I think is effective, but then also she gives input as far as what's important to her. So.
Gotcha. Are you a fan of loose format or more strict formats through the Agile Manifesto?
Yeah. So loose format. Describe that. Describe that a little bit more as far as.
I guess from the base of the question, do you have specific things that you're trying to stay on track with, or is it more wide open that you're allowing people to kind of navigate that as they go?
Yeah, so I think at the core within Agile, is you want it to be a lightweight framework. You want it to be a lightweight framework, and then you want to allow teams to the freedom to be able to help and to be able to figure out how are they best going to be able to deliver software. And so part of that, there are some things within the framework, let's say within Scrum, there are some things that are definite. We're going to have different, with Scrum, they call their meeting ceremonies. So we're going to have our different meetings, our different Scrum ceremonies. We're going to have the daily Scrum. That's not up for debate. So that's something we're going to have. Or we're going to have our retrospectives. We're going to have the sprint planning. So there are some things that you do want to reinforce and make sure are done and done properly.
Okay.
But then as far as you want to be able to allow teams to have creativity within how they're delivering software as well. So you don't want to be as rigid as far as, my role is not to come and tell them exactly what to do and to dictate to them, but it's more so to help them figure out what's the best approach for that team, because really every team is different.
Yep.
And there's some things that I've seen that work tremendously well with some teams, and then other teams it might not work quite as well with them. So I have to, even as a Scrum Master, as I'm coaching it as an Agile coach, I have to take a step back and observe that team and figure out what is it that's going to be effective for that team.
Here's a question for you based off of kind of the discovery process. How do you, when you're asking for ideas and input, you're going through this whole discovery process, is there a way to say, okay, well, these are some of the ideas that have come up, and how do you prioritize them or put some on the back burner without kind of discouraging thought and input?
Yeah, so I think one thing is you want to make sure that everyone has a voice. All ideas are valuable. They might not all be actionable. They might not all result in something that you actually may do. But I think within creating ideas, within a brainstorming or type a design thinking type session where you're trying to think creatively, I think you want to be able to allow there to be the creative thought where people are able to throw out whatever idea it may be, even if it seems outlandish. They're able to throw it out and propose it, and it's not get shot down immediately. Because when you do that, then that causes people to restrict and to not want to suggest things because they fear embarrassment or whatever the case may be.
But if you have 100 ideas that are thrown out on the board, how are you prioritizing? We're gonna tackle these, or these are the ones that are prioritization. How are you determining that through the process?
Yeah, so if it's within if you're talking about like within software development, that aspect,
Sure.
then usually the product owner is the one that owns the prioritization of those ideas.
Okay.
And so they're looking and they're working with customers, the customer base. They may have ideas because they're typically a domain expert, so they have ideas as well. But they're really looking as far as what's going to be most beneficial to the customer, and so they're helping to narrow those down. If it's some things such as best practices where the development team is trying to figure out what best practices they want to support, then that's going to be one of those things where amongst themselves they're working to try to figure out, how does the team want to deliver in a best practice manner. If it's talking about an organization and you're looking and you're having a ton of ideas that as far as how can we improve the organization, then I think what I've seen successful is a voting system where you have folks vote, but it's more so you're voting without the knowing whose idea it is. Like you want to take it and make it anonymous as far as the idea, who came up with the idea.
Yeah. You told me about an exercise the other day. Walk through that process because I think that's very valuable. I think people can apply that easily.
Yeah. So one of my companies, we did a team retrospective for a large group. So it might have been 50, 60 people in the room. And the question was posed, how can we improve this group? How can we improve the company as far as the work that we're doing? Yep. So everyone has an index card. We write down ideas. You have one idea or one thing that you can write that you want to improve in this particular setting. Yeah. And then what we do is we walk around, we pass the cards, take a few seconds to do that.
So shuffle cards
them up
within the people.
Okay. So everyone ends up with a different card, someone's idea that they don't know the person. And all they are able to do is just judge the idea. You judge it 1 through 5, with 1 being, why in the world did this person put this on this card? To 5 being, man, this is the best thing in the world. We need to do it. And then you do that and you do it maybe 5 times and shuffle it around. Each time you're shuffling it around. And then at the 5th time, you tabulate the score, you add it up. And then you talk about, you have a priority stack of the ideas that the folks in the room think are the most impactful. And so you can further discuss those with the people in the room, or you can kind of take those to yourselves and kind of see what actions can come out of those ideas.
So when you explained that to me, it was really eye-opening because we've done similar type of things within our organization, except we did it where everybody knew what the ideas were and everybody voted on it more in a public manner. So here recently there was a couple of ideas that were thrown on the board, and then everybody got a voting, basically votes to do that. And there was a popularity contest at a point. There was people that were people in the room that were really politicking for one of the ideas to have a higher level of relevance. Yeah. So, which has worked very well in the past for us. It helps to bring up those prioritization levels. But in this method, it's anonymous, and it's not being influenced.
Exactly.
I think that's a key factor. I think both have their place. We've had success, but the anonymous side, where it's not there's a lot of unknowns with it, is very valid because you get each person's true understanding of how this is important, uninfluenced. Right. So that's something that I think every business owner can utilize. If you have a team of 3 or you have a team of 300, there's ways to apply those things to understand what needs to be fixed within an organization. That would be hard to manage that with 300 people in a room. Good grief. But breaking down into small groups, so you have the ability to process that information very easily. Cool. So a couple of the takeaways I think from our conversation today is, one, if you're going to go down this method of being agile, it is understanding that you're looking for short iteratives, however you say that, so that you can update and change and then produce something in a short time frame to see what works. Right. Fail fast was the term that you used. Also, give everybody a voice when you're going through the process to get everybody to have their ability to buy in. And then when those problems come up or when they're going in that direction, they all have buy-in for that. Anything you would like to add on to that?
Yeah, I think summarizes it great, very well. I think also the aspect of just being able to have short iterations, it brings value to the customer or whatever you're doing quicker. You want quick feedback, which is the basis. Is really you want to have iterations that you can have quick feedback so that you're able to continuously improve. So I think that's the last thing I would add is just continuous improvement where you're not staying the same. Businesses that stay the same get stagnant, and typically there's going to be someone in the marketplace that's going to come and surpass them. So within businesses, you look to be able to continuously improve, continuously to be innovative, and then you're able to continuously, provide value to your customers.
Yeah. Always improving.
Yeah.
I will say this, the big thing that I'm taking away from this type of conversation, or one of the things that we picked up from earlier, is get the people in the room that are involved in the process now. That is, I think a lot of times there's conversations that groups of people come together and they try to fix a process that they've never got. They don't have any direct feedback on.
Yeah. Very true.
They may have a really great perspective on it, but bringing one person or two people in that are actually doing that process on a daily basis can completely revolutionize that conversation and give that feedback and really kind of collaborate together on it. So I think that's one of the big things I learned from this process and conversation. So very cool. Nick, thank you very much for your time and all of the information that you shared. I know that it's very valuable to our audience based off of the feedback that we've gotten. It's something that everybody deals with. Prioritization, understanding what to work on, and then how can we stay in motion for improvement rather than just talk about it and let it sit stagnant, because that's the downside of all that. So thank you very much for that conversation. I think based off of some of the feedback we get from this episode, we'll have to come back and answer more questions and expand upon it a little more. What do you think?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks for having me, Chad. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. If this is your first time watching or listening, we have tons of episodes available. We over a year's worth of episodes out there right now. You can check them all out at Loc-Doc.net/podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe. If you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. It'll help get this information out to other people. Share it on social media if you are feel so inspired to, and let other people know that this information is available. It's on every podcast platform. You can find the video version on YouTube, Facebook, and on Periscope. It's all there available for it. Just search LOC-DOC-INC. And we are excited to have another episode every Tuesday at 9 a.m. on all of those platforms. So we look forward to seeing you then on the next episode of the Coffee Break Podcast. To learn more about the topics discussed today and to connect with us online to hear all of the episodes available, visit Loc-Doc.net/podcast.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break.
The Coffee Break Podcast is brought to you by Loc-Doc Security. We'd love to connect with you online on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search LOC-DOC-INC.